Hey, this video's been in production for a while, so I do say this year to refer to 2024 and next year to refer to 2025, so just wanted to correct that. I did a similar thing last year, but I did it in the form of an unscripted tier list. But since I make scripted videos now, I thought I'd do a proper ranking instead. I didn't play as many games as I'd like to this year, but I still have more than enough for a ranking. My criteria for what counts is a little different than some other people, so let's go over it. 1. This is a ranking of games I played this year, meaning it doesn't have to only be games released in 2024. 2. I didn't fully finish some of these games, but I played enough to get an opinion. And 3. If I had a significantly new perspective on a game I played in a previous year, then it's eligible for this list. Let's begin. This is so bad. It is just so agonizingly boring. I mean, you're bored out of your mind within the first minute. It's just the 1,000-Year Door, but worse. It's shocking Nintendo made a game this bad. Super Paper Mario is so much. Okay, every time I do this, I have a joke last place. I do think the game is very, very boring, but I'd give it like a 6-ish out of 10. It doesn't do anything offensively bad. I like the hammer. The Bowser fight is alright, but it bored me to death. This is the only time I'll ever mention joke last places. If anyone gets mad in the future, just reply with something cryptic. I mean, this game sucks! Okay, the actual worst game of the year. For me, it's less about the puzzles being extremely cryptic, and more about how unplayably bad the controls are. You only have 4-directional movement, which would already suck when the enemies can move anywhere, but Link stabs the sword instead of swinging it, and that means it's very annoying to hit anything. It's just very clunky in general. I would appreciate the openness more if it wasn't so cryptic. And the only reason it isn't lower is if you spam rewind and use a guide, the game isn't horrible. But the fact you need to do that to get any enjoyment out of the game should say enough. Dungeons are fine. I can have a little fun with them, but even they get worse as the game goes on. I could respect it as the start of the Zelda series, but it really does suck. A game being released in 1986 does not automatically make it a 10 out of 10. If a game is ass, a game is ass. If you saw my live stream, you might be surprised that this isn't F tier, but honestly, once you know how to play the game, it's not that bad. Like, yeah, no tracks go above D tier in the whole franchise, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But it is a racing game with exclusively garbage tracks. On normal road, the game controls decently. It's not the greatest controlling game I've ever played, but it's not horrible. But it's a very nothing game. There's no real reason to play it. There isn't really anything else to say. So this game is complicated. It has so much more content than the original. New bosses, new stars. It should be so much better, but the controls are just unplayably bad. I was excited to play this game since I thought, wow, Mario 64's controls are already ass, so the DS version can't be so much worse, right? And they probably removed all the dumb jank. No, they kept all the stupid garbage from the original, and now it's even worse. Even playing on the 3DS is miserable, but if this game had good controls, it would be very good, which is what keeps it from F tier, but it still kinda sucks. This was somewhat recently added to NSO, so I thought I'd try it out. It's fine. It has some pretty creative ideas. They aren't ultra memorable. Kremlantis is a really cool idea, but it's an underwater level, and underwater controls in this game especially suck, which brings us to the main issues. The controls are kinda bad. They're not atrocious, but they just kinda suck. I was hesitant to say this at first since I might just not be used to them, but after watching some other reviews, that seems to be a common criticism. I think it's the momentum. On land, it's just weird sometimes. Again, not awful, just odd, but the underwater controls are awful. I don't mind underwater controls normally, but here it just sucks. And that one jumping platform level is absolutely atrocious. It's on the same level as Lost Levels, but most of the levels are pretty good, so it's not a bad game, even if it has some issues. This is tied with Donkey Kong Land for me, but the controls are better in this game, so I gave it the edge. I guess I'll start with the controls. controls. It's a momentum-based platform which is pretty unique for the time, but obviously it had flaws. About half of the levels suck. Labyrinth and Marble Zone are really weak. However, they aren't as bad as they could be. I found this game in general to be pretty easy, which keeps some of the zones from being absolutely horrible, since you aren't really suffering when playing them, you're just really bored. But then Scrap Raid Act 3 happens. It's a Labyrinth at its full potential. It fucking sucks. I just ended up taking the shortcut, which is what most people do from what I've seen. The other half of the game is pretty good though. Green Hill's a bit overrated in my opinion. I still think it's a very solid zone, but it's like high B or low A. Spring Yard has some flaws, but it's overall fun. But Starlight is amazing. Way better than Green Hill. It uses momentum and speed in such creative ways. Scrap Raid Act 1 and 2 are fun as well. They aren't insanely good, but they're complex and pretty fun. Most of the good zones let you go fast, and most of the bad zones force you to go really slow. I'm not one of those people who think Sonic should always be fast, but Sonic is about speed, so going extremely slow in half the levels is a really odd design choice. But again, I think Scrap Raid Act 1 and 2 do a pretty good job of a slower paced Sonic level, even if they don't match the highs of some of the other zones. It's a fine enough game. It's not a very good Sonic game since a lot of the levels are really slow, but as a normal platformer, again, it's fine. So here comes the Mario Kart Onslaught. I played every Mario Kart game this year, so those take up a decent chunk. Unlike Super Mario Kart, this game has a couple of good tracks, but it's held back by the horrible drifting. Your drift is so wide, holy shit. So it's better to not drift most of the time. Tracks like Bowser's Castle save the game though. Barrel edging out 64 is Super Circuit. It has some pros and cons compared to 64. Firstly, it has a better track selection. It has more than a couple good tracks, and some that are really good. And one track in this game is one of the best in the series. The controls are pretty good, and this is the shortcut game. But the main issue is that the tracks are pretty simple. It might sound like this should be higher, but how simple the tracks are is a pretty big downside. It's still decent though. God, I'm so sorry if you don't like Mario Kart, but this is a mixed bag. In terms of highlights, it's really good. Airship Fortress, Delfino Square, TikTok Clock are all amazing. The controls are decent, though drifting kinda sucks. Well, that was a partial lie. All the good karts have really bad drifting, and all the shit vehicles have good drifting, and I hate that. But that's a relatively minor problem. The main thing is that 2/3 of the tracks are shit. I don't want to spoil my ranking of this game, but the majority of tracks are in D or F tier, but I don't really care about it that much. It's good enough game overall, but with how horrible the retro tracks are and how some of the new tracks aren't even that great, I don't get how it's considered the best to some people. Well, I do, it's nostalgia, but you get my point. It's an overall good game. This is definitely the most obscure game I played this year. I got it for like $4 in 2018. Well, my dad got it for $4 in 2018. Yes, I'm a zoomer. I want to start a series on Omeg 2 where I just go through random obscure games in my backlog, and this is what I want to make a video on. I was obviously expecting this game to be bad, but it really isn't. It's not some hidden gem, but it's a quality enough game. It's a fighting game where you fight a bunch of people. There's a story, but I skipped it. I haven't seen any of the Bruce Lee movies, but according to my dad, generally it follows the plot of the movie or movies. That power punches and kicks are the most useful. Light punches and kicks have no hit stun and do no damage, so they kinda suck. Then the flying kick and jump kick, I don't know what it's called, but they're both pretty strong but hard to hit. More so the flying kick. Throwing is also really useful. You can stun lock some opponents with it, but blocking is basically impossible because of how the SNES D-pads are designed. It's very hard to hold back and down at the same time, so you basically can't block. Also, life systems suck, but it's meant to be an arcade game, so I'm not penalizing it too much for that. It's a simple, fun game. It's fun enough to combine different cards. There's a cool element of strategy too, with what cards to play and how to use your limited discards. It's a pretty fun and addicting mobile game, but come on, this shouldn't be a Game of the Year nominee. This year was super weak, but even then, why put this as a Game of the Year nominee? You could have put Echoes of Wisdom or something like that. Echoes isn't even a game worthy of being called Game of the Year, but it's more worthy than a simple card game. I'm being really harsh, but that's only because it's being nominated for Game of the Year. It strives and accomplishes what it wants to be, and it's a very fun game. Pretty addicting too. I could be wrong, but I generally remember people really liking this game when it came out. Even some non-RPG fans liked it, but I thought it was good. It was pretty creative, but it was a standard level of creativity for the Mario series. I should really finish this game, since it's pretty good and also it's not that long. The combat was the main thing I liked. Standard RPG combat can be pretty boring, and that's coming from someone who loves RPGs as a genre. It's mainly that it feels like button mashing and doesn't have the strategy or any skill element I want it to have. But having action commands keeps you engaged and adds challenge. However, the inputs are generally the same for every attack. The action command aspect feels basic. Now, I know this is the first game where they had action commands, so that makes sense. These aren't problems with the game, just reasons why it isn't higher, if that makes sense. I'll talk more about my relationship with RPGs in a later video. It's still a very good game. The unique gimmick adds a lot to this game, but everyone talks about that, so I won't elaborate further. It does have PD Piranha, who is the best character in fiction objectively. I'm mad I didn't play as him while getting footage for the ranking. By the way, thank you for all the support on that video. It's weird that the 64 video didn't get any attention since it was like a week after, but also some cool features like the All Cup Tour, and the controls are really fun and unique. They're very wacky, but in a good way. I'm always careful when I say the controls are slippery or anything, because most people will assume that means the controls are bad. They are extremely slippery, but the game controls super well. Oh yeah, it also has the most consistent track selection in the series. While it does have the highs of some other games, it still has some bangers and there aren't any bad tracks, just a couple mid ones. It's New Super Mario Bros. U, but good. I do need to replay Mario U, so don't quote me on that, at least until that review comes out. But from what I remember, Mario U was pretty forgettable, but this game remixes the levels to actually be fun and memorable. I would say hard, but I didn't struggle with this game. It is difficult, I just didn't struggle with it. I struggled with Mario U though. That game destroyed me, even though it's really easy. Anyway, it's a fun and fresh game. Funnily, I remember the Luigi U versions of the levels more than the Mario U versions, but the format is still the main reason I like it. Good amount of the levels are still not that memorable, but the game's actually really fun this time. This and the next one are basically interchangeable. Anyway, the side quests in this game are very fun. Some of them can be pretty hard too, and the 3-day system makes it really stand out. The only annoying things when you lose key items that take 3 days to make, cough cough, gold dust. That was stupid. The masks were also great additions. Obviously, the transformation masks are amazing. You get completely different movesets, but some of the other masks are fun too. I like the Brevin mask, even though it isn't super useful, and the pig mask is funny. One of the bigger standouts is the dark atmosphere. It's excellent and makes this game feel super unique. But the game does have some flaws, mainly the dungeons. Snowhead is the worst dungeon I've played so far in any Zelda game. If there's one thing I hate in video games, it's repeating a ton of shit I've already done. And here, every minor mistake causes you to repeat the whole dungeon. And this part is fucking evil. So after going through this torture chamber of a section, guess what you get for it? A stray fairy. Not a cool dungeon item, or the fierce deity mask, that's what you should get. Not even a key or anything useful for beating the dungeon. A fucking stray fairy. I beat the dungeon and almost got to the Great Bay Temple, but it was taking a while and I knew I probably wouldn't like the Great Bay Temple, so I took a break. I'm definitely planning to come back to it though, and it's still an amazing game, but it has some issues. This year I finished my Mario Marathon, and this was a pretty good send-off. It's a great open world Mario adventure. The main thing that makes this stick out is the freedom you have. It's a true open world Mario game. Collecting the shines is really fun too, and the final boss is amazing. The main thing holding this back is that it's still sort of tech demo-y. It's clearly a blueprint for the next 3D Mario game and not the next big 3D Mario. I'm making it sound like it isn't mainline. It's in a limbo state along with Luigi U and 64DS. It's a great game, but still a blueprint. Man, it's been a while since the last Mario Kart entry. Mario Kart Wii is a solid contender for the best in the series. Its track selection is amazing, probably the best out of all of Mario Kart. 8 obviously has more, but Wii is more consistent and has a similar amount of bangers. The amazing track selection is only partially why this is so great though. They can wheelie, which makes straightaways actually kinda fun, and inside drift, which lets you take sharper turns. Bikes just feel unique and equally, if not more fun than karts. There are a couple parts where inside drift is required, like Moonview Highway, but honestly, if you're refusing to use the main gimmick of the game, that's your own fault. Wow, I'm playing Aerial Only Little Mac and I can't play any matches online. This game sucks. To be fair, karts are very fun to control, but tracks were designed around bikes. This is an excellent game on par with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Link's Awakening might seem like a pretty standard Zelda game, and you'd partially be right. Most of the dungeons aren't too insane, combat is pretty standard, and there isn't a main gimmick. But what makes this special are the characters. Doing the side quests and just talking to the characters is just so pleasant. Marin obviously steals the show, but the other characters are pretty fun too. There's a crocodile artist, a catfishing goat, Mario, etc. You get attached to the world and it's just so jolly. Gameplay wise, it's pretty good too. I know I said it was a standard Zelda, but standard Zelda is still really good. Eagle's Tower and Turtle Rock are standouts. There aren't really any bad dungeons. And that ending, holy shit. It's probably my favorite ending of all time. If you have been spoiled, for the love of God, play this game. Play it on a Game Boy emulator if you have to, but obviously go for the Switch version if you can. I actually did this 100% as intended. I played this on original hardware without looking anything up, and it's a pretty hard game. I'd say it's the ideal difficulty, at least for my skill level at the time. It's challenging, but I didn't get stuck on any boss or enemy. It also has some cool puzzles. I don't want to spoil any of them, but the one before the third dungeon was really clever. It has some weaknesses, like some of the dungeons are pretty weak, either forgettable like some of the early dungeons, or just ass like Turtle Rock and the Ice Palace. But the puzzle design is still excellent, and it's challenging. So if you haven't played it, give it a try. I'm planning on doing a full review of this game soon, so I'll keep my thoughts brief. That's a Zelda game where you play as Zelda, that means you play differently than Link. I mean, I thought this was obvious, but I saw a guy complaining that Zelda doesn't play exactly like Link, so I thought I'd clarify. Different echoes are useful for different situations. Believe it or not, P-Hats cannot single-handedly beat this game. It also has the return of traditional dungeons. They're good. It's the classic 2D Zelda formula with a new spin. Just know the combat is more puzzle-based than traditional action-based combat. You know how I said Mario Kart Wii rivaled this game? I was talking about offline, because this game has online and Wii doesn't really. I know you can mod the game to play online, but come on. I don't want to play against people who play this game professionally as the casual who has like 10 hours. 8 Deluxe has the most amount of tracks in the series and extremely good controls. Though it doesn't have wheelies or Wii inside drift, but the controls are still ultra polished and really good. Vehicles are well balanced and it has a ton of great tracks. The only small negative is that I got most of my enjoyment from analyzing it and not playing it. Don't get me wrong, I had a shit ton of fun both playing the cups and playing online, but it's the reason it isn't higher. This is the Mario Wonder of 2016. It's a very easy game, but it's outstandingly creative. It themes everything around robotic or futuristic type things, which is done phenomenally well. But they didn't slouch on the abilities either. Toxic is good and Archer is amazing. Doctor and Circus are also super creative, even if they aren't the best of the best. But the main gimmick is the mech suit. It's really cool, but isn't a huge factor of why this game is so great. Again, that's the creativity. Most Kirby games make up for being easy with the side content. Unfortunately, this game is kind of lacking in side content, but the campaign is so good that it easily makes up for it. It is by far the best Kirby game that I've played. I love DKC1 and I've heard DKC2 is a significant improvement. Man, is that an understatement. It is the Tears of the Kingdom of Donkey Kong Country. It takes everything that worked in the original and amplified it while fixing all the issues. It's so much more creative too. You go through a circus, a beehive, and a tower filled with toxic waste. It is so good. It also amplifies the difficulty, which is welcome. The weird camera is fixed with the possible exception of Creepy Crow and that one fun part of Chainlink Chamber. But the unreactable stuff in Creepy Crow tracks your movements so you can juke it, so it's not that bad once you notice that. Chainlink Chamber isn't a pattern even if it is still annoying. I noticed significantly less jank hitboxes as well. And the new animal buddies are amazing. Squitter is always a blast. You can take out enemies from a distance and create your own platforms. Squawks might take some getting used to, but once you know how to use him, he's really fun. And how can you not love Ratley? Just look at him. The Kongs are also balanced significantly better than DKC-1. Diddy Kong is way faster and has way more fun controls. But Dixie Kong has a broken hover ability, so they're about equal. In terms of levels, this game definitely delivers. Haunted Halls, Toxic Tower, Target Terror, Windy Well, Castle Crush are all amazing. It is to this day one of the best 2D platformers of all time. Before we get to the game of the year, I wanted to dedicate a segment to the games I didn't get a new perspective on this year, but I replayed and wanted to talk about. Donkey Kong Country 1 is amazing. It does have some flaws, but it's just so fun. Return to Dreamland Deluxe has some amazing bonus content. 100%ing it is really fun. Could have been on this list honestly, but I don't think my opinion has changed enough to warrant that. Probably would have gone under Link's Awakening. Sticker Star is actually really good so far. I like the exploration, and if you don't expect it to be an RPG, I think you'll really enjoy it. And TF2 is TF2. Onto the game of the year. Ocarina of Time was a surprise hit for me. Most Revolutionary games have severe problems once you take the rose tint away, but this is just as good as it was in 1998. Well, maybe it's not the greatest game of all time, but it still holds up really well. The plot, while not taking up a huge part of the gameplay, is really strong, mainly because of the main villain, Ganondorf. He's manipulating stuff from behind the scenes, and as a Star Wars fan, that's a cool archetype, but it certainly isn't a slouch when it comes to gameplay either. Combat works really well, you have a huge amount of items at your disposal. The puzzle design is also super solid, even if there are some dungeons that are weaker than others. But what makes this game truly special is 100%ing it. With 99% of games, the 100% just sucks, which is why I don't value 100% as much as what's required. If I did, basically every game ever made would be shit. In Ocarina of Time, every single reward feels justified. You go on this massive trading quest which takes up a huge amount of time. Any other game would give you a heart piece or something equivalent to that, but not Ocarina of Time. They give you the Bigoron sword. While in games like Echoes, doing side quests only gets you rupees. In Ocarina, you get a heart piece. Even without 100%ing it, it's still a very good game, but get the most out of it by 100%ing it. Use a guide though. I can't imagine the Skulltulas without it. I actually liked getting them with a checklist and a guide. Felt like a treasure hunt, and it was satisfying to cross Skulltulas off the list. Some people talk about the deep symbolic meaning of the game with growing up and shit. I don't know, I just like killing women with a big sword. Which, speaking of women, the Spirit Temple is probably my favorite dungeon in the series, and the Shadow Temple isn't far behind. Couldn't find a way to weave that in. That's my list. Tell me if there are any games I should have played this year that I didn't. I know Black Myth Wukong was supposed to be good, but I'd rather play Elden Ring first. I would absolutely love to play Astrobot, but I don't have a PS5. Please release it on PC. I know it's one of their 4 exclusives, but still. I'm playing Pikmin 2 next year, so that's exciting. I love both 1 and 4, and 2 is seen as one of the best. I have heard some criticism towards the difficulty, but I've also heard that towards Sunshine, so thank you all for an amazing 2024, and Happy New Year. Bye!